The emergency klaxon split the silence of Deck 7 like a blade through silk. Professor Cale Veron's four-eyed gaze snapped toward the training corridor just as the alert panel flooded amber. His secondary eyelids flicked shut in reflex, a Velhari stress response, before he composed himself and crossed the threshold at a controlled pace. Behind him, 14 alien cadets scrambled to keep up, their assignment tablets clutched to their chests, their various appendages trembling with second-hand alarm. "Stay composed," Cale said, his translator lace converting Velhari clicks into galactic standard. "This is precisely the kind of incident you enrolled in this course to understand." The corridor opened into the Zero-G combat simulation bay. Ethan Cross was standing in the center of it, which was, medically speaking, the first impossible thing. The second impossible thing was that he was laughing. Cale had been teaching xenobiological trauma response at the Interstellar Academy for 11 cycles. He had studied species from 37 worlds. He had once watched a Durrani warrior lose 2 limbs to a plasma cutter and expire from neurological cascade shock before the second limb finished falling. He had reviewed the mortality statistics on Death World or Physiology 14 times, because the data never stopped confounding him. Nothing had prepared him for Cadet Ethan Cross. The human was standing with his right arm hanging at an anatomically incorrect angle. The shoulder had separated completely. The deltoid sat several centimeters lower than it should, the whole joint rotated outward in a way that made 3 of Cale's students look away on instinct. A gash across Ethan's forehead was producing a quantity of blood that, on any Velhari, would indicate imminent cardiac failure from volume loss. It dripped freely from his brow, across his cheek, and onto the deck plating in steady, rhythmic drops. Ethan was using his left hand to check the pulse reader on his wrist. "Yeah, heart rate's up, but that's just adrenaline," Ethan said, noticing the professor's arrival. He looked up, grinning through a red-stained face. "Hey, Professor Veron." Simulation went sideways. One of the impact drones had a targeting glitch. Took a full collision at about 60 kilometers per hour. He gestured casually at his dislocated shoulder with his chin. "This needs to go back in, though. You got a med kit?" Silence. 14 alien cadets stared at the human with expressions ranging from horror to what could only be described as existential crisis. Torix 8, a Chellan student whose species communicated partially through involuntary color shifts, had gone a shade of gray that Cale recognized as "I am reconsidering my life choices." "Cadet Cross," Cale said carefully, "you sustained a high-velocity impact collision. You have visible cranial laceration, significant blood loss, and a fully dislocated glenohumeral joint." "Yep." "You are standing." "Yep." Unaided. Ethan blinked. "I mean, yeah. It's a shoulder. My legs work fine." He rolled his neck and winced slightly. "Okay, that part maybe I shouldn't have done. But seriously, Professor, if someone could just brace my arm, I can pop this back in. Or I can do it myself against the wall, but last time I did that it bruised the muscle pretty bad, Ann." Cadet Yelisara, "I'm ready with 4 arms and a nervous system so sensitive she could detect pain frequencies through ambient air pressure," made a sound that no translator rendered, because there was no word in galactic standard for witnessing something that should not be possible. "He is suggesting," she whispered to Torix 8, "that he will manually reinsert his own dislocated joint." "I heard," Torix 8 whispered back, now cycling between gray and a pale, sickly yellow. Cale retrieved the medkit. He had done so numbly, moving on professional autopilot, because his conscious mind was still parsing the data in front of him. He had read the files on human pain tolerance. Read them, in the clinical sense, rows of numbers, percentile rankings, comparative neurological charts showing that the human pain threshold sat at approximately 2.3 times the Velhari average and 4.1 times the Mredi baseline. He had understood those numbers the way one understands a star's surface temperature, as an abstract fact with no felt meaning. Watching Ethan Cross lean against the wall, grip his own dangling arm, and, with a controlled exhale and a grunt, shove his own shoulder back into the socket, converted those abstract numbers into something Cale felt in his secondary nervous cluster. The sound it made was not something he would be cataloging in today's lesson notes. "There," Ethan said, rotating the arm experimentally, face scrunched in concentration rather than agony. "Still need to ice it. Might have clipped a tendon. But functional." He pressed his sleeve against the cut on his forehead and looked at the class. "Sorry if that was, you all okay?" 3 students were sitting on the floor. One of them had not chosen to sit down. Cale ran the formal assessment during the medical bay visit. Ethan sat on the examination table and answered questions with the cheerful cooperation of someone discussing a minor inconvenience. The head wound required 6 tissue bond strips. The shoulder, Cale ran 2 scans before accepting the result, had been successfully relocated without surgical intervention. The human's blood pressure had already returned to a normal range. "Does it hurt?" Cale asked, and then immediately felt embarrassed by how much he had needed to ask. Ethan considered this with the same thoughtful expression he gave exam questions. "Yeah. It hurts. Like, probably a 7 out of 10 right now? The shoulder especially." He paused. "But I mean, you deal with it. It's not like the pain means anything's getting worse at this point. The joint's back in. The bleeding stopped. So the pain is just..." He shrugged his good shoulder. "Noise." Cale set down his scanner. Noise. He thought of the Durrani warrior. He thought of Yelisara, who had once been grounded for a week after a sparring partner accidentally struck her arm too hard. He thought of his own species, the Velhari, and the very specific evolutionary history that had made high pain sensitivity a survival advantage on their low-predator homeworld. He thought about what kind of world produced a creature that classified a 7 out of 10 pain rating as background noise. "Cadet Cross," Cale said slowly, "where you come from Earth, was there a great deal of this?" Ethan looked at him. "Getting hurt? Surviving it." The human was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was a strange smile, not boastful, not dismissive. Just tired, and a little proud, and very old in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Yeah," Ethan said. "You could say that. We've been surviving things that should have killed us for about 300,000 years. Kind of a habit at this point." Cale returned to the classroom without Ethan, who had been cleared for rest rotation and wandered off to get food immediately after the incident, because the human had mentioned his metabolism ran high under adrenaline and he was hungry, and faced 14 cadets who were looking at him with the particular expression of students who wanted an explanation for something the universe had not warned them about. He pulled up the holographic display. He opened the file on human pain neurochemistry. On endorphins. On the ancient evolutionary bargain that Earth had struck with the creatures it forged in its brutal, monster-haunted past: "I will hurt you, and you will survive it, and you will keep moving." Today's lesson, Professor Cale Veyron said, has changed. He looked at the students. "We were scheduled to cover theoretical trauma response in Type 4 Death World species." He paused. "Instead, we are going to talk about what you witnessed. Because several of you are going to serve alongside humans in your careers, and you need to understand one foundational truth before that day arrives." He clicked to the first slide. It was not a chart. It was a single sentence, in Galactic Standard, large enough to read from the back row. "They are not being brave. This is just Tuesday." Torix 8 stared at it. Then, very quietly, went gray again.